Hello, my sleepy friends. Imagine standing in the middle of one of the largest and most astonishing cities in the ancient world. The year is somewhere in the early 1500s. The morning sun rises slowly over a vast lake in central Mexico, and its light begins to reflect off thousands of buildings, temples, and canals. This city is Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. At its height, it was one of the most advanced cities in the Americas, filled with markets, temples, schools, and neighborhoods connected by stone roads and water canals. Canoes glide quietly across the water as merchants begin transporting food, flowers, and goods into the city's famous markets. Farmers from nearby floating gardens bring fresh vegetables and maize. Priests walk slowly toward enormous temples where ceremonies will soon begin. Warriors wearing bright feathered clothing patrol the streets. Everything in this city appears organized, disciplined, and carefully structured. But behind this beautiful and powerful civilization existed a legal system that was incredibly strict. The Aztecs believed that order was the foundation of society. Without discipline, they believed the world would fall into chaos. Because of this belief, the Aztec Empire developed some of the most severe and unusual punishments in the ancient world. To the Aztecs, laws were not simple suggestions. They were seen as rules that protected the balance between people, society, and even the gods themselves. Breaking those rules was not only considered a crime against other people, it was also seen as disturbing the sacred order of the universe. For that reason, punishments could sometimes appear shocking to modern observers. The Aztec Empire had a highly organized legal system. Judges existed, courts operated in major cities, and many crimes were carefully investigated before punishment was decided. This might surprise many people because the Aztecs are often remembered mainly for warfare or religious ceremonies, but their society was actually deeply structured and regulated. In many ways, Aztec laws were even stricter than those in many European societies during the same time period. Crimes such as theft, drunkenness, or disrespect toward authority were treated extremely seriously. The Aztecs believed that allowing small acts of disorder would eventually weaken the entire empire. One of the most interesting aspects of Aztec law was that it applied to everyone, even members of noble families. In many societies, powerful people could escape punishment because of their social status. But in Aztec culture, nobles were often held to even higher standards than ordinary citizens. If a noble broke the law, the punishment could sometimes be harsher because they were expected to serve as examples for the rest of society. Education in Aztec society also reflected this strong emphasis on discipline. From a very young age, children were taught that obedience and respect were essential qualities. Parents raised their children under strict guidance, and discipline was considered necessary for shaping strong character. Some of the punishments used for children may seem unusual today. Historical records describe parents using methods designed to create strong memories so children would not repeat their mistakes. One of the most famous methods involved burning chili peppers near a disobedient child. The smoke from the peppers caused intense irritation in the eyes and throat, making the experience extremely uncomfortable. The goal was not to cause lasting harm, but to teach the child that disobedience had consequences. Children also attended schools where discipline continued. Boys often went to schools that prepared them to become warriors, while girls were taught skills related to managing households and family life. Teachers expected strict obedience from their students. When rules were broken, punishments were used to reinforce the idea that discipline was essential for survival in the Aztec world. As children grew into adulthood, the laws of Aztec society became even more serious. Adults were expected to follow strict codes of behavior in public life, work, and religion. Crimes such as theft, lying in court, adultery, or disrespect toward elders were considered serious offenses that could lead to severe punishments. The Aztecs believed that a well-ordered society required people to behave responsibly at all times. Every farmer, merchant, priest, and warrior had a role to play in maintaining the stability of the empire. If someone broke the rules, the punishment was meant not only to correct the individual but also to protect the entire community. Because of this philosophy, some punishments in Aztec society became famous for their unusual and sometimes frightening nature. These punishments were designed to discourage crime by making the consequences unforgettable. And as we move deeper into the world of the Aztec Empire, we will begin to explore some of the most bizarre and surprising punishments ever recorded in ancient history. As the great city of Tenochtitlan continued its daily rhythm, the strict laws of the Aztec Empire quietly shaped every moment of life inside its walls. To visitors arriving from distant lands, the city appeared impressive and orderly. The markets were carefully regulated, the temples dominated the skyline, and thousands of citizens moved through the streets following routines that had been taught to them since childhood. But beneath this organized surface existed a powerful legal system that ensured discipline remained strong throughout the empire. Aztec society believed deeply that the stability of the world depended on people behaving properly. The Aztecs did not separate law, religion, and daily life the way modern societies often do. Instead, they believed these things were tightly connected. If individuals behaved dishonorably or disobeyed the rules, the consequences were believed to reach far beyond the individual crime. Such actions could threaten social order, weaken the authority of rulers, and even anger the gods who were believed to maintain balance in the universe. Because of this belief, the Aztec Empire developed a legal system that punished crimes quickly and firmly. Judges held positions of great importance within the empire. In large cities, there were courts where officials listened to disputes, questioned witnesses, and delivered decisions. These judges were expected to act fairly, and in many cases written records of cases were kept using pictographic documents created by Aztec scribes. The idea of justice in Aztec culture focused strongly on deterrence. Punishments were often designed to make sure that both the criminal and everyone watching clearly understood the consequences of breaking the law. Public punishment was therefore common. When people saw what happened to someone who violated the rules, they were reminded to follow the laws themselves. One of the crimes that received extremely harsh punishment in Aztec society was theft. In a civilization where food supplies and goods had to be carefully managed to support large populations, stealing from others was considered a serious threat to community stability. Markets were the center of economic life in Aztec cities, and thousands of merchants gathered daily to trade food, textiles, tools, and luxury items. Because so much economic activity occurred in these public markets, the Aztecs were determined to protect them from dishonesty. If a person was caught stealing something valuable, the punishment could be severe. In some cases, the thief could be forced into slavery to repay the value of the stolen goods. The criminal might be required to serve the victim or the victim's family until the debt was repaid. This form of punishment was meant not only to compensate the victim, but also to teach the criminal a powerful lesson about responsibility. However, If the stolen item belonged to a temple or was considered sacred property, the punishment could become much more serious. The Aztecs believed that temples were the homes of the gods, and that stealing from them was an offense not just against society but against the divine order itself. Crimes against temples could therefore lead to extremely harsh consequences. Another crime that received strict punishment was lying in court. Aztec judges depended on truthful testimony to make fair decisions. If someone was discovered giving false information during a legal case, that act was considered an attempt to corrupt the entire justice system. Because of this, lying during legal proceedings could result in severe penalties meant to discourage others from doing the same. Respect toward elders was also deeply valued in Aztec culture. Age was associated with wisdom and authority, and young people were expected to behave respectfully toward older members of society at all times. If a younger person insulted or disrespected an elder in public, punishment could follow quickly. The Aztecs believed that maintaining respect between generations was essential for preserving social harmony. Drunkenness was another behavior that Aztec laws controlled carefully. Alcohol existed in the Aztec world in the form of a fermented drink known as pulque, which was made from the sap of the maguey plant. However, drinking was heavily regulated. Ordinary adults were generally expected to avoid drunkenness, and young people were strictly forbidden from consuming alcohol. If a young person became drunk, the punishment could be surprisingly severe. In many cases, the individual would be publicly disciplined to demonstrate that reckless behavior would not be tolerated. The Aztecs believed that drunkenness weakened discipline and could lead to disorder within society, which was why strict limits were placed on alcohol consumption. Interestingly, elderly members of society were sometimes allowed to drink pulque more freely during certain ceremonies or celebrations. This exception showed that Aztec laws were not completely rigid, but instead reflected the social roles and responsibilities of different groups within the community. As we continue exploring the strange and sometimes shocking punishments used by the Aztec Empire, it becomes clear that their legal system was designed to maintain a very specific kind of society. Discipline, order, and respect were expected from everyone, from ordinary farmers to powerful nobles. And for those who chose to ignore these expectations, the punishments waiting for them could become some of the most unusual and unforgettable consequences recorded in ancient history. As the disciplined life of the Aztec Empire continued inside the crowded streets of Tenochtitlan and across the many cities that surrounded it, the legal system remained one of the strongest forces shaping everyday behavior. People did not simply follow the laws because soldiers watched them. They followed the laws because from childhood, they had been taught that discipline was necessary for the survival of the entire world. In Aztec belief, human society existed in a fragile balance maintained through proper behavior, respect for authority, and obedience to tradition. When someone broke that balance, punishment was expected to restore it. Among the many crimes that Aztec law treated very seriously was adultery, which was considered a dangerous act capable of damaging families and disturbing social stability. Marriage in Aztec society was not only a personal relationship between two people, but also an agreement that connected families, property, and social responsibility. Because of this, any violation of marriage vows was treated as a threat to the order of the household and the wider community. If a married person was caught committing adultery, the punishment could be extremely severe. Historical accounts suggest that both individuals involved in the act could face harsh consequences, if they were discovered. The Aztecs believed that allowing such behavior to go unpunished would encourage dishonesty and weaken the trust that families depended upon. This strict approach reflected the broader Aztec belief that personal discipline was necessary for maintaining harmony in society. Another behavior that could lead to punishment was public disorder, which included actions such as loud arguments, disruptive behavior in markets, or disrespect toward community authorities. The Aztecs valued calm and controlled behavior in public spaces, especially in crowded markets where thousands of people gathered each day. Marketplaces were essential for trade and food distribution, and any disruption could create confusion or conflict among merchants and customers. Market officials were responsible for maintaining order in these busy places. If someone behaved aggressively, cheated customers, or attempted to disrupt trade, officials could intervene quickly. Punishments might involve public humiliation or other forms of discipline, meant to remind both the offender and the surrounding crowd that rules existed to protect the community. The Aztecs also enforced strict expectations regarding honesty in trade. Merchants played a very important role in the empire, traveling long distances to bring valuable goods such as cacao beans, feathers, textiles, and precious stones to the markets of major cities. Because trade networks were so important, cheating or dishonesty in business transactions was treated seriously. If a merchant was caught deliberately deceiving customers, the consequences could damage not only their reputation, but also their ability to continue trading. Trust was essential for long-distance trade, and merchants depended heavily on their reputation for honesty. Losing that reputation could effectively end a merchant's career within the trading system. Another surprising area where Aztec laws applied strict punishment was disrespect toward parents. Family structure was considered one of the foundations of Aztec society, and parents were responsible for raising disciplined children who would contribute to the community. If a child openly disrespected their parents, this was viewed as a serious failure of character. Punishments for such behavior could involve physical discipline or public correction, meant to teach the child humility and obedience. These punishments were not intended purely as anger or revenge. Instead, they were seen as necessary lessons that helped shape young people into responsible adults who understood their duties to family and society. Education itself reflected these values strongly. Schools in the Aztec Empire emphasized endurance, obedience, and humility. Students often woke before sunrise to begin their daily routines, which included physical labor, study, and religious instruction. Teachers expected strict discipline from their students, and failure to follow instructions could result in punishment designed to reinforce self-control. Despite the harshness of some punishments, it is important to remember that Aztec society viewed these measures as necessary tools for maintaining order. The empire governed millions of people spread across many cities and villages. Without a strong system of rules and consequences, leaders feared that social stability could collapse. For the Aztecs, punishment was therefore not simply about hurting those who broke the law. It was about protecting the structure of society and ensuring that everyone understood the responsibilities that came with living in the empire. And as we continue moving deeper into the strange and fascinating world of Aztec justice, we will begin to encounter some of the most unusual punishments ever recorded in ancient history. Punishments that reveal just how seriously the Aztecs defended the discipline of their civilization. As life continued across the enormous Aztec Empire, The strict system of law and discipline followed people everywhere, from the crowded markets of Tenochtitlan to the small farming villages that surrounded the Great Lakes of central Mexico. Every citizen understood that the empire was built on order, and the leaders believed that if discipline weakened, the strength of the entire civilization could begin to crumble. Because of this belief, the Aztecs developed punishments that were not only strict, but also deeply symbolic, designed to remind everyone watching that breaking the rules carried serious consequences. One of the areas where Aztec punishments could become particularly unusual involved the misuse of authority by officials or nobles. In many ancient societies, people with higher social status could sometimes escape punishment because of their power. But the Aztecs believed that those who held positions of authority had an even greater responsibility to behave properly. Nobles were expected to act as examples of discipline and honor for the rest of society. If a noble abused their power or behaved dishonorably, the consequences could be severe. Aztec rulers believed that corruption among leaders was especially dangerous because it could spread disorder throughout the empire. When nobles failed to follow the laws they were supposed to uphold, punishment served as a powerful reminder that no one stood above the rules of society. Another unusual aspect of Aztec justice appeared in the treatment of warriors who failed their duties. Warriors held a very respected place in Aztec culture because military success allowed the empire to expand and secure resources. However, if a warrior acted cowardly or abandoned their responsibilities during battle, this could bring shame not only to the individual, but also to their family and community. The Aztecs believed that courage was essential for protecting the empire, and cowardice threatened the safety of everyone. Punishments for warriors who failed their duties could involve public humiliation or the loss of privileges that warriors normally enjoyed. Aztec warriors who captured enemies in battle were rewarded with honor and status, but those who failed to meet expectations could see their reputation damaged permanently. In a society where honor was deeply valued, this loss of respect could be one of the most painful consequences a person could experience. The Aztecs also used punishments that were designed to create powerful memories, especially when teaching discipline to younger members of society. Some of these punishments may appear strange today because they relied on sensory experiences rather than physical harm. For example, children who repeatedly ignored instructions might be forced to remain awake for long periods or perform physically exhausting tasks as a reminder of the importance of obedience. These punishments were intended to strengthen endurance and teach children that discipline required effort and patience. In the Aztec worldview, learning to control one's behavior was considered an important part of becoming a responsible adult. Another interesting area of Aztec law involved respect toward religion and sacred places. The Aztecs believed that their gods played an active role in maintaining the balance of the world. Temples, religious ceremonies, and sacred objects were treated with deep reverence because they were seen as connections between the human world and the divine realm. If someone disrespected a temple or interfered with a religious ceremony, this was viewed as a serious offense against both society and the gods. Priests and temple officials carefully guarded sacred spaces, and anyone who attempted to disturb them could face strong punishment. This close connection between religion and law meant that the Aztec legal system was not simply about maintaining order among people. It was also about protecting what they believed to be the spiritual stability of the world itself. As the empire grew larger and more complex, These laws helped leaders maintain control over millions of people living across vast territories. Cities continued to thrive, markets remained active, and the social structure of the empire stayed remarkably organized. But behind this powerful system always stood the reminder that anyone who broke the rules, whether a farmer, merchant, warrior, or noble, could face punishments that were designed to leave a lasting impression, not only on the individual, but on the entire community watching. And as we continue moving deeper into the world of Aztec justice, the punishments we encounter become even more unusual, revealing just how seriously the Aztecs defended the order of their powerful civilization. As the Aztec Empire continued expanding across the valleys and mountains of central Mexico, its system of law remained one of the strongest forces holding the society together. From the powerful rulers in Tenochtitlan to the farmers working the floating gardens known as chinampas, everyone lived within a world where discipline was constantly reinforced. The Aztecs believed that every person had a role in maintaining the balance of the empire, and anyone who failed to respect that role risked facing consequences that were often both severe and unforgettable. One of the most unusual aspects of Aztec punishment involved the way public shame was used as a powerful tool of justice. In Aztec society, reputation was extremely important. Honor and respect determined how a person was treated within the community. Because of this, losing public respect could be as damaging as physical punishment. If someone behaved dishonestly, cheated others in trade, or violated social expectations, they could be publicly exposed before their neighbors. The community would see that the person had broken the rules, and the loss of trust could follow them for the rest of their life. In a society where cooperation and shared responsibility were essential for survival, this form of punishment could isolate an individual socially and make daily life far more difficult. The Aztecs understood that shame could act as a powerful warning to others. When people saw the consequences faced by someone who violated the law, they were reminded that their own reputation depended on following the same rules. In this way, public discipline reinforced the values that held Aztec society together. Another crime that received strong punishment in the empire was drunken behavior, especially among younger members of society. Alcohol existed in Aztec culture in the form of a fermented drink called pulque, which was made from the maguey plant. This drink had been part of Mesoamerican culture for centuries, and was sometimes used during religious ceremonies or celebrations. However, Aztec law strictly controlled who was allowed to drink and when it was permitted. Young people were forbidden from consuming alcohol, and even adults were expected to drink carefully and avoid losing control of their behavior. The Aztecs believed that drunkenness weakened discipline and could lead to disorder within the community. If a young person was discovered drinking pulque, punishment could follow quickly. The goal was to prevent habits that might weaken the self-control expected of responsible citizens. Aztec leaders believed that maintaining discipline among the younger generation was essential for the future strength of the empire. Even adults could face punishment if they became excessively drunk in public. Losing control of one's actions was considered embarrassing and dangerous because it could disrupt the calm order expected in daily life. These laws reflected the Aztec belief that personal self-control was an important quality that every citizen needed to develop. In addition to crimes involving alcohol or dishonesty, the Aztec legal system also addressed behavior that threatened community harmony. For example, people who caused repeated disturbances in neighborhoods or refused to cooperate with communal responsibilities could face disciplinary actions. These punishments reminded people that the survival of their community depended on teamwork and shared responsibility. In the Aztec worldview, individual behavior was always connected to the well-being of the larger society. What becomes increasingly clear when examining Aztec punishments is that their legal system was built around the idea of maintaining balance. Laws existed not only to punish wrongdoing, but also to reinforce the values that kept the empire functioning smoothly. Discipline, respect, honesty, and cooperation were seen as essential qualities that every member of society needed to uphold. The punishments used by the Aztecs may seem strange or severe to modern readers, but within their cultural context, they served a very specific purpose. They reminded everyone that life within the empire required responsibility, self-control, and loyalty to the rules that governed society. And as we move further into the strange and sometimes surprising world of Aztec justice, we begin to see even more unusual ways that the empire enforced discipline among its people, revealing a civilization where law, culture, and daily life were tightly connected in ways that shaped every moment of existence. As the powerful Aztec Empire continued ruling the Great Valley of central Mexico, its system of discipline reached into every corner of society. The empire controlled many cities, villages, and territories, and maintaining order across such a large population required laws that people took very seriously. In Aztec culture, punishment was never seen as random cruelty. Instead, it was viewed as a necessary force that protected the stability of the empire and reminded everyone of their responsibilities to the community. One of the most fascinating and unusual areas of Aztec punishment involved false identity and impersonation. In Aztec society, clothing, jewelry, and hairstyles often represented a person's social rank or profession. Warriors, priests, nobles, and merchants all had distinctive appearances that showed their role in society. Because social hierarchy was so important, pretending to be someone of higher rank was considered a serious offense. If someone attempted to dress like a noble or wear decorations reserved for warriors without earning those honors, it was seen as an act of deception. The Aztecs believed that social roles had to be respected in order for society to function properly. Allowing individuals to falsely claim higher status would weaken the structure of the empire and create confusion about authority. Punishments for this type of deception could be extremely strict. The Aztec leaders wanted to make sure that everyone understood that honor and status were earned through service, discipline, and achievement. Pretending to hold a rank that had not been earned was considered deeply disrespectful to those who had worked hard to achieve that position. Another crime that received unusual punishment was damage to farmland or food supplies. The Aztec Empire depended heavily on agriculture to feed its large population. Farmers cultivated crops such as maize, beans, squash, and chili peppers on both traditional farmland and the famous floating gardens known as chinampas. These carefully constructed agricultural systems were incredibly productive and allowed the Aztecs to support large cities like Tenochtitlan. Because food production was so important, damaging crops or interfering with farmland was treated as a serious threat to the survival of the community. Anyone who intentionally destroyed crops, stole food supplies, or disrupted farming systems could face punishment designed to protect the resources that kept the empire alive. The Aztecs believed that food represented life itself. Farmers worked long hours maintaining irrigation channels, planting crops, and harvesting produce, that would eventually reach the markets of large cities. Anyone who interfered with this system was seen as endangering not only individual farmers, but the entire population that depended on their work. Punishments related to agriculture therefore served as a strong warning. They reminded people that respecting farmland and food supplies was essential for the survival of the empire. These laws helped protect the agricultural systems that made Aztec civilization possible. The Aztec legal system also addressed crimes involving property and household responsibility. Families were expected to maintain their homes and contribute positively to the surrounding community. Neglecting one's responsibilities, creating disturbances in residential areas, or repeatedly causing trouble could bring attention from local officials. Community leaders monitored neighborhoods to ensure that everyone followed the rules that kept daily life peaceful and productive. If someone consistently disrupted the harmony of their neighborhood, they could face punishment designed to restore order and remind others of the importance of cooperation. What makes the Aztec system of punishment particularly interesting is how closely it reflected the empire's values. Every punishment carried a message about the type of society the Aztecs wanted to maintain. They valued discipline, respect for hierarchy, protection of resources, and loyalty to community traditions. By enforcing these values through law, the Aztec Empire created a society where people understood that their behavior affected not only themselves, but also the stability of the entire civilization. Punishments were therefore not just about individual mistakes. They were part of a larger system that protected the order of the empire. As we continue exploring deeper into the world of Aztec justice, the punishments become even more fascinating, revealing how this powerful civilization used discipline and law to maintain control over one of the most impressive societies in the ancient Americas. As the Aztec Empire continued to grow stronger across the valleys of central Mexico, its leaders remained deeply concerned with maintaining discipline among the millions of people living under their rule. Large cities like Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan formed the powerful core of the empire, while countless villages and farming communities spread across the surrounding lands. In such a vast and complex society, order could not be left to chance. The Aztecs believed that laws and punishments were necessary tools that kept the entire system functioning smoothly. One of the areas where Aztec punishments became particularly strict involved respect toward rulers and political authority. The emperor, known as the Huey Tlatoani, was considered the highest leader of the empire. His position carried not only political power but also deep religious significance. The Aztecs believed that their rulers were chosen to guide the people and maintain harmony between the human world and the gods. Because of this belief, showing disrespect toward the emperor or other high officials was treated as a serious offense. Authority was expected to be respected at all times, especially in public settings where the actions of individuals could influence others. If someone openly insulted a leader, disrupted an official ceremony, or attempted to challenge the authority of government officials, punishment could follow quickly. The Aztecs believed that public respect for leadership helped maintain unity across the empire. Without that respect, disagreements could grow into larger conflicts that might weaken the stability of society. Punishments for such behavior therefore served as a reminder that authority existed to maintain order and protect the community. Another area where Aztec punishments could appear unusual involved the misuse of sacred clothing or symbols. In Aztec culture, clothing carried deep meaning. Different groups within society wore specific types of garments that represented their role and achievements. Warriors who had captured enemies in battle were allowed to wear special feathered costumes and decorations that showed their bravery. Priests also wore distinctive clothing during religious ceremonies, often decorated with symbols connected to the gods they served. Nobles wore fine cotton garments and jewelry that demonstrated their social status. Because clothing represented honor and achievement, wearing items that had not been earned was considered extremely disrespectful. If an ordinary person attempted to dress like a noble or wear warrior decorations without having captured enemies in battle, this could be treated as a serious offense. The Aztecs believed that such deception undermined the social structure that organized their society. Punishments for this behavior were meant to reinforce the idea that status had to be earned through discipline and service. The empire valued achievement, and symbols of honor were carefully protected to ensure that they remained meaningful. The Aztec legal system also took military discipline very seriously. Warfare played an important role in Aztec expansion and in maintaining the empire's power. Warriors trained for many years, learning not only combat skills but also the values of courage, loyalty, and obedience to their commanders. If a warrior disobeyed orders during a military campaign, it could endanger the entire army. The Aztecs believed that discipline on the battlefield was essential for survival. Soldiers had to trust that every member of their unit would follow commands and act with bravery. Because of this, violations of military discipline could bring strong punishment. These punishments were designed to remind warriors that their actions affected the safety of their fellow soldiers and the success of the empire itself. Despite the strictness of these laws, Aztec society continued to function as a highly organized and vibrant civilization. Markets thrived with trade, temples filled with ceremonies, and cities expanded across the landscape. The empire remained powerful because its leaders believed strongly in maintaining order through discipline and law. Every punishment, whether directed at a farmer, merchant, noble, or warrior, reflected the same basic belief, that the strength of the empire depended on the behavior of its people. When individuals followed the rules, the empire remained stable and prosperous. When someone broke those rules, punishment reminded everyone watching that the balance of society had to be protected. And as we move even deeper into the fascinating world of Aztec justice, the punishments we discover reveal just how determined the Aztecs were to defend the order of their remarkable civilization. As the powerful Aztec Empire continued thriving across the Valley of Mexico, its leaders remained deeply focused on maintaining discipline among its people. The cities were large, the markets were busy, and thousands of families depended on stable laws to keep daily life organized. In this world, punishment was not simply about anger or revenge. Instead, the Aztecs believed punishment was a necessary force that helped protect the structure of their civilization and ensured that everyone understood their place within society. One of the more unusual aspects of Aztec punishment involved the idea of public responsibility. In many communities, people were expected to watch over one another and maintain the moral behavior of their neighbors. If someone behaved dishonestly, cheated others in trade, or caused repeated trouble within the neighborhood, the entire community could become involved in correcting the problem. This system created a society where individuals knew that their behavior was constantly being observed by others. Public punishment therefore served an important role. When someone broke the law, the punishment was often visible, so that the community could see the consequences. This public element was meant to reinforce discipline and remind everyone that the rules applied to all members of society. It also helped prevent rumors or misunderstandings, because people could witness that justice had been carried out. Another strange but important part of Aztec punishment involved disrespect toward teachers and elders. Education was considered extremely important in Aztec society. Schools existed for both boys and girls, and young people were taught skills, discipline, religion, and responsibilities that would guide them through adulthood. Teachers were respected figures who carried the responsibility of shaping the next generation of citizens. If a student openly disobeyed a teacher or behaved disrespectfully in school, punishment could follow quickly. The Aztecs believed that respect toward teachers was essential because those teachers were responsible for preparing young people to serve the empire. Without discipline in schools, the future stability of society could be threatened. In many cases, punishments were meant to strengthen endurance and character, rather than simply cause pain. Students might be required to perform difficult tasks, remain awake during long hours of study, or carry out physical labor as a reminder of the importance of obedience. These experiences were believed to build self-control and prepare young people for the responsibilities they would face as adults. The Aztecs also had strict expectations about cleanliness and public behavior in certain environments. Markets, temples, and ceremonial spaces were treated with special respect. These places were central to the life of the community, and maintaining order in them was considered essential. If someone behaved inappropriately within these spaces, officials responsible for maintaining order could intervene. Market supervisors watched closely for dishonest trade practices, while temple priests ensured that sacred ceremonies were conducted without disruption. Punishments for disturbing these places reinforced the idea that some parts of society required particularly careful behavior. One of the reasons Aztec punishments sometimes appear bizarre to modern observers is that they often focused on teaching a powerful lesson rather than simply removing someone from society. The goal was to create a memory that would prevent the person from repeating the same mistake in the future. This approach reflected the Aztec belief that discipline could shape character. People were expected to learn from their mistakes and return to their responsibilities within the community. By reinforcing discipline at every level of society, the Aztecs believed they were protecting the strength and unity of the empire. Life within the Aztec world therefore existed within a framework of rules that touched nearly every part of daily activity. From the behavior of children in schools to the conduct of merchants in markets and warriors on the battlefield, everyone understood that the laws of the empire guided their actions. And as we continue moving deeper into the fascinating and sometimes unsettling world of Aztec justice, the punishments we encounter reveal just how seriously the Aztecs defended the order and stability of their powerful civilization. As the disciplined rhythm of life continued across the cities and villages of the Aztec Empire, the legal system remained deeply connected to the everyday responsibilities of its people. In the crowded streets of Tenochtitlan, merchants traded goods from distant lands, farmers delivered crops grown on floating gardens, and priests moved quietly through temple courtyards preparing for religious ceremonies. Every one of these activities depended on order and cooperation, and the Aztecs believed that strict laws were the only way to protect that delicate balance. One of the most unusual areas of Aztec punishment involved behavior inside the marketplace, which was one of the most important places in Aztec society. The markets of large cities were enormous and filled with thousands of people each day. Traders brought maize, cacao beans, cotton cloth, tools, pottery, feathers, and precious stones to sell. The famous market of Tlatelolco, located near Tenochtitlan, was so large that early Spanish visitors later described it as one of the most impressive markets they had ever seen. Because markets were essential for the survival of the population, the Aztecs protected them with strict rules. Special officials supervised the markets and made sure trade remained fair and organized. These officials carefully watched merchants to ensure that they did not cheat customers by offering false measurements or poor quality goods. If a merchant was caught deliberately deceiving customers, punishment could follow quickly. The Aztecs believed that dishonesty in trade damaged trust between people and threatened the stability of the economy. A dishonest merchant risked losing their reputation permanently, and in a society where trade depended heavily on trust, this could destroy their ability to continue working. The Aztec Empire also enforced strong punishments for damage to property belonging to temples or the state. Temples were considered sacred spaces where priests communicated with the gods through ceremonies and offerings. These structures were often large stone pyramids rising high above the city, decorated with carvings and brightly painted surfaces. Any act that damaged these sacred places was treated as a serious offense. The Aztecs believed the gods protected their civilization, and disrespecting sacred spaces could anger those gods. Because of this belief, temples were carefully protected and maintained by priests and temple workers. Similarly, property belonging to the government or the emperor was treated with great respect. The Aztec rulers controlled large resources, including land, tribute goods from conquered regions, and supplies used to support the empire. Interfering with these resources could be seen as an attack on the authority of the state itself. Another unusual area of punishment involved misbehavior during religious ceremonies. Aztec religious life was highly organized, and ceremonies followed detailed traditions that had been practiced for generations. Priests prepared carefully for these events, and participants were expected to behave with seriousness and respect. If someone disrupted a ceremony or behaved disrespectfully during sacred rituals, punishment could follow. The Aztecs believed these ceremonies helped maintain the balance of the universe, and any disturbance could be seen as threatening that balance. Maintaining order during religious events was therefore extremely important. Even ordinary daily behavior could sometimes lead to punishment if it violated the expectations of Aztec society. Loud arguments, disorderly behavior in public places, or repeated refusal to cooperate with community responsibilities could draw the attention of local officials. Community harmony was one of the values the Aztecs protected most carefully. Villages and neighborhoods depended on cooperation for farming, construction, and defense. Anyone who repeatedly caused trouble within their community could face punishment designed to restore peace and remind others of the importance of shared responsibility. These punishments reveal an important truth about Aztec civilization. The empire was not maintained only through military power or religious authority. It was also sustained by a detailed system of laws that guided how people behaved in nearly every situation. Through these laws, the Aztecs created a society where discipline, honesty, and respect were constantly reinforced. And when those values were ignored, the punishments that followed served as powerful reminders of the order that held their world together. As the great cities of the Aztec Empire continued to thrive across the Valley of Mexico, the strict system of law remained a powerful force shaping everyday life. From the bustling markets of Tlatelolco to the quiet farming villages beyond the lake, people understood that discipline and obedience were expected from everyone. The Aztecs believed that the strength of their civilization depended not only on warriors and rulers, but also on the behavior of ordinary citizens who followed the laws that held society together. Among the many strange punishments used in the Aztec world, one of the most fascinating involved the punishment of laziness or refusal to work. In Aztec society, hard work was considered a basic duty. Every member of the community had responsibilities, whether they were farming crops, producing goods, trading in markets, or helping maintain public infrastructure such as roads and irrigation canals. The Aztecs believed that a healthy society depended on everyone contributing their effort. If a person repeatedly avoided their duties or refused to work, they could be seen as placing a burden on the rest of the community. Laziness was not simply viewed as a personal weakness. Instead, it was seen as a behavior that could weaken the entire system that supported the population. Because of this belief, people who avoided their responsibilities could face punishment designed to correct their behavior. These punishments often involved forcing the individual to complete difficult labor or public work tasks. The goal was to teach discipline and remind the person that the community depended on cooperation from everyone. Another unusual aspect of Aztec punishment involved respect for parents and family authority. Family life was one of the foundations of Aztec society, and children were raised under strict supervision from a young age. Parents were responsible for teaching their children obedience, humility, and respect for elders. If a young person insulted their parents or ignored their instructions repeatedly, punishment could follow quickly. In Aztec culture, disrespect toward parents was seen as extremely serious because it threatened the authority structure within the family. Without strong family discipline, leaders believed that society itself could become unstable. Punishments for this type of behavior were meant to reinforce humility and remind young people that wisdom was believed to come with age and experience. Elders were respected figures within Aztec communities, and maintaining respect between generations was considered essential for preserving social harmony. The Aztecs also enforced strict punishments for false accusations. If someone accused another person of a crime but was later proven to have lied, the consequences could be severe. The Aztecs believed that false accusations could damage reputations, create unnecessary conflict, and weaken trust within the community. Justice depended heavily on honest testimony during legal cases. Witnesses were expected to speak truthfully before judges, and lying under oath was treated as a serious offense. By punishing false accusations, the Aztec legal system attempted to protect the integrity of the courts and ensure that decisions were based on reliable information. Another interesting element of Aztec punishment involved the importance of self-control in daily behavior. The Aztecs believed that a disciplined person could control their emotions, actions, and desires. Losing control, whether through anger, dishonesty, or reckless behavior, was viewed as a failure of character. For this reason, many punishments were designed to reinforce the idea that individuals needed to develop strong personal discipline. People were expected to behave calmly in public, treat others with respect, and fulfill their responsibilities to their families and communities. When these expectations were ignored, punishment served as a reminder that the strength of the empire depended on the behavior of its citizens. Every law reflected the Aztec belief that order and balance were necessary for the survival of their civilization. Through this system of discipline, The Aztecs built one of the most powerful societies in the Americas before the arrival of Europeans. Their laws shaped the behavior of millions of people and helped maintain stability across a vast empire filled with cities, villages, farms, and temples. And as we continue exploring the strange and sometimes surprising punishments used by the Aztecs, we begin to see how deeply the idea of discipline was woven into every part of their culture and daily life. As the long story of discipline inside the Aztec Empire continues, it becomes clearer that punishment in this society was not simply about crime and law. It was also about maintaining the structure of everyday life that allowed millions of people to live together inside a powerful and organized civilization. From the moment children were born, they were raised with the understanding that life required responsibility, patience, and obedience to the rules that held society together. These lessons followed them through childhood, adulthood, and even into old age. One of the more unusual aspects of Aztec punishment involved control over speech and behavior in public spaces. The Aztecs believed that words carried power. Speaking carelessly, insulting others, or spreading harmful rumors could create conflict within communities. Because of this, people were expected to speak respectfully and behave calmly in public settings. Markets, temples, and public plazas were places where large groups of people gathered each day. These places were important for trade, religious ceremonies, and communication between different parts of the empire. If someone began shouting insults, spreading lies, or creating arguments that disturbed public peace, local officials could intervene. Punishment in these situations was meant to restore calm and remind others that public harmony was an important value in Aztec society. The Aztecs believed that disorder often began with small acts of disrespect. A single argument in a crowded marketplace could quickly grow into a larger conflict if not controlled. By enforcing discipline over speech and behavior, leaders hoped to prevent these conflicts before they spread. Another fascinating area of Aztec punishment involved carelessness with fire. In ancient cities like Tenochtitlan, buildings were often made from materials such as wood, reeds, and other natural resources. While these materials were practical for construction, they also created a serious danger if fires were not controlled carefully. Cooking fires, ceremonial flames, and household hearths were part of daily life. But if someone allowed a fire to spread carelessly and damage nearby homes or buildings, the consequences could be severe. Fire had the potential to destroy entire neighborhoods, and the Aztecs treated fire safety as a serious responsibility. Punishments for careless handling of fire served as a reminder that every person needed to protect the safety of their neighbors. In crowded cities where thousands of people lived close together, even a small accident could lead to major destruction. By enforcing strict consequences, the Aztecs encouraged citizens to remain cautious and responsible. The Aztec legal system also addressed the responsibilities of community leaders. Local officials were expected to supervise neighborhoods, maintain order, and ensure that laws were followed. These leaders held important roles because they connected ordinary citizens with the larger government of the empire. If a local leader abused their authority, ignored their duties, or allowed disorder to grow in their community, they could face punishment as well. The Aztecs believed that leadership came with serious responsibilities. Officials were expected to serve the people honestly and maintain the standards of discipline required by the empire. This idea that leaders could be punished for failing their duties was an important part of Aztec law. It demonstrated that the rules applied to everyone, not only ordinary citizens. Even those who held positions of authority were expected to follow the same principles of discipline and responsibility. When looking closely at the punishments used by the Aztecs, a clear pattern begins to appear. These punishments were not random or chaotic. They were carefully connected to the values that defined Aztec civilization: respect, honesty, discipline, cooperation, and responsibility were all qualities that the empire worked hard to protect. By enforcing these values through a powerful system of law, the Aztecs were able to maintain one of the largest and most organized civilizations in the ancient Americas. Their cities flourished, their markets remained active, and their society functioned with a level of structure that impressed even the European explorers who later arrived in the region. The punishments that might appear strange to modern readers were part of a larger philosophy. The Aztecs believed that maintaining order in society helped preserve the balance of the world itself. In their view, discipline was not only necessary for human communities but also for the harmony between humanity and the gods. And as we move toward the final part of this exploration into the bizarre punishments of the Aztec Empire, we begin to see how these laws reflected the deeper beliefs and traditions that shaped one of the most remarkable civilizations in the history of the Americas. As the long centuries of Aztec civilization unfolded across the Valley of Mexico, the empire's legal system continued shaping how people behaved, worked, and interacted with one another. Life in this powerful society required constant discipline. From the farmers cultivating maize fields to the merchants trading goods in crowded marketplaces, every person lived under a network of expectations that guided daily life. Punishment existed not simply to frighten people, but to remind them that their actions affected the entire community. One of the most fascinating areas of Aztec punishment involved respect for property and communal resources. In the Aztec world, land and resources were often shared within communities, rather than owned by individuals in the modern sense. Farming land was carefully organized and families were given sections to cultivate. These plots supported entire households, providing maize, beans, squash, and other crops that fed both families and city populations. Because agriculture was so essential, interfering with another family's farmland was treated very seriously. If someone damaged crops, stole harvests, or tried to take land that did not belong to them, punishment could follow quickly. The Aztecs believed that harming a neighbor's food supply threatened the survival of the entire community. Farmers worked long hours under the sun planting seeds, maintaining irrigation channels, and protecting their crops from pests and drought. Their harvests were the foundation of the empire's economy and food supply. Anyone who attempted to disrupt this system risked facing consequences designed to protect the stability of agricultural life. Another area where Aztec punishments could appear unusual involved control over clothing and luxury goods. In Aztec society, clothing carried strong meaning. The materials used in garments often reflected the social rank of the person wearing them. Nobles wore soft cotton clothing decorated with bright colors and elaborate patterns, while ordinary citizens usually wore simpler garments made from rougher materials. Certain types of jewelry, feather decorations, and finely crafted clothing were reserved only for people who had earned those honors. Warriors who captured enemies in battle, priests who performed important religious duties, and nobles who held political authority were allowed to wear special items that symbolized their achievements. If someone from a lower social class attempted to wear clothing reserved for nobles or warriors, this could be treated as a serious offense. The Aztecs believed that social roles needed to remain clear in order for society to function properly. Wearing decorations that had not been earned was seen as dishonest and disrespectful to those who had gained those honors through years of service and discipline. Punishments for this type of behavior reinforced the idea that status came from effort and loyalty to the empire. The Aztec world valued achievement, and symbols of honor were carefully protected so they would retain their meaning. The Aztec legal system also addressed behavior that disturbed public peace. In crowded cities like Tenochtitlan, thousands of people lived close together in neighborhoods connected by narrow streets and canals. Maintaining calm and order in these busy areas was essential. If someone repeatedly caused trouble in public places, started fights, or disrupted the normal activities of the community, officials could intervene. These punishments were meant to restore harmony within the neighborhood and remind others that cooperation was necessary for living in such large and complex cities. The Aztecs believed that society functioned best when individuals controlled their emotions and respected the people around them. Public behavior reflected a person's character, and maintaining calm discipline was considered a sign of maturity and responsibility. As the empire grew stronger, these laws helped maintain stability across a population that numbered in the millions. Cities continued to expand, trade networks reached distant regions, and cultural traditions remained strong. Behind this success stood a powerful belief that discipline and law protected the structure of civilization itself. The punishments used by the Aztecs may seem strange to modern observers, but within their society they served a clear purpose. They reinforced values that leaders believed were essential for maintaining order in a vast and complex empire. And as we move toward the final reflections on Aztec punishment, we begin to see how these laws were not only about controlling behavior, but also about preserving the traditions, beliefs, and stability that defined one of the most remarkable civilizations in ancient history. As the Aztec Empire reached the height of its power in the early 1500s, its cities remained filled with life, discipline, and carefully structured routines that governed the behavior of millions of people. Tenochtitlan stood at the center of this civilization, like a shining island city rising from the waters of Lake Texcoco. Stone roads connected neighborhoods, canals carried canoes filled with goods, and enormous temples towered above the city skyline. Behind the beauty and organization of this world existed a powerful system of laws that reminded everyone living there that order had to be protected at all times. Among the most unusual punishments in the Aztec Empire were those connected to the violation of sacred traditions. Religion was deeply woven into the daily life of the Aztec people. Priests, temples, ceremonies, and offerings formed an essential part of society. The Aztecs believed that the gods had created the world through sacrifice, and that humans had a duty to maintain balance through respect and ritual. Because of these beliefs, sacred objects and ceremonial spaces were treated with extreme care. Temples were not simply places of worship. They were seen as the homes of powerful gods who protected the empire. Priests spent years training to perform ceremonies correctly, following traditions that had been passed down through generations. If someone entered a sacred space without permission, disrupted a ritual, or disrespected a religious object, punishment could follow. The Aztecs believed that such behavior could anger the gods and bring disaster upon the community. Maintaining proper respect during religious ceremonies was therefore considered essential for protecting the entire empire. Another unusual area where Aztec punishment appeared involved military discipline among warriors. Warfare played a central role in the expansion and power of the Aztec Empire. Young men often trained from childhood to become warriors, learning how to fight with weapons such as the macuahuitl, a wooden sword embedded with sharp obsidian blades. Warriors who performed bravely in battle could earn great honor and recognition. Capturing enemies during combat was especially valued, and successful warriors were rewarded with special clothing, decorations, and higher social status. These achievements allowed warriors to rise within the military hierarchy and gain respect from their communities. However, the Aztecs also expected warriors to follow strict rules during battle. Cowardice, disobedience to commanders, or abandoning fellow soldiers could bring shame and punishment. Military discipline ensured that armies remained organized and effective during campaigns. Without this discipline, leaders feared that soldiers might panic during combat and weaken the strength of the empire's forces. Punishments for violations of military duty were therefore meant to protect the honor and effectiveness of the army. In a society where warriors played such an important role, maintaining discipline among them was considered essential. The Aztec legal system also reflected strong expectations regarding community responsibility. Villages and city neighborhoods relied on cooperation among residents to maintain irrigation systems, repair buildings, and support communal farming activities. These tasks required people to work together for the benefit of everyone living in the community. If someone repeatedly refused to participate in communal work or ignored responsibilities that supported the neighborhood, punishment could follow. Leaders believed that selfish behavior threatened the survival of the entire community. Cooperation allowed villages and cities to function effectively, especially in an environment where agriculture and infrastructure required constant maintenance. These punishments reinforced the idea that every person had a role in maintaining the stability of society. The Aztecs believed that individuals were not isolated from one another. Instead, they were connected through networks of family, work, religion, and community. When someone violated the expectations of that system, punishment reminded everyone watching that discipline and responsibility were essential for preserving the order of the empire. As we continue exploring the strange and sometimes surprising punishments used in Aztec society, we begin to see how deeply the concept of balance influenced their worldview. Laws existed not only to control behavior, but also to maintain harmony between people, communities, and the gods they believed guided the universe. As the Aztec Empire continued flourishing across the Valley of Mexico, its powerful cities and organized communities remained tightly connected through systems of law, tradition, and discipline. In places like Tenochtitlan, life moved in a carefully structured rhythm where every person understood their responsibilities to family, community, and the empire itself. Markets opened each morning with thousands of merchants arranging their goods. Priests prepared rituals inside towering temples, and farmers traveled from surrounding lands bringing food that supported the massive population of the capital. Behind this busy and vibrant civilization stood a legal system that reinforced the values of order, respect, and responsibility through punishments that were sometimes harsh and often unusual by modern standards. One of the most striking areas of Aztec punishment involved the protection of social hierarchy, which was considered essential for maintaining stability within the empire. Aztec society was organized into different social classes, including nobles, warriors, priests, merchants, craftsmen, and farmers. Each group had specific roles and responsibilities that supported the functioning of the empire. Nobles governed cities and advised rulers. Warriors defended and expanded the empire's territory. Priests maintained religious traditions. Merchants connected distant regions through trade networks. And farmers produced the food that sustained the population. Because these roles were carefully structured, the Aztecs believed that individuals needed to respect the boundaries of their social position. If someone attempted to ignore these boundaries by claiming privileges that belonged to a higher class, punishment could follow. For example, certain types of luxurious clothing, jewelry, and feather decorations were reserved only for nobles or accomplished warriors. These items were symbols of honor and achievement, representing years of service or success in battle. If an ordinary citizen attempted to wear such decorations without earning them, this could be treated as an act of deception. The Aztecs believed that these symbols had meaning only when they reflected genuine accomplishments. Pretending to hold a higher status was seen as disrespectful to those who had truly earned that honor, and it also threatened the clarity of the social order that structured the empire. Another unusual aspect of Aztec punishment involved discipline among merchants, who were some of the most important figures in the empire's economy. Aztec merchants, known as Pochtaca, often traveled long distances to trade valuable goods such as cacao beans, jade, feathers, textiles, and precious stones. These merchants formed powerful trading networks that connected the Aztec capital with distant regions across Mesoamerica. Because merchants carried valuable goods and represented the empire in foreign territories, they were expected to follow strict rules of conduct. Dishonesty, cheating customers, or misrepresenting goods could damage the reputation of Aztec traders and disrupt the flow of commerce that supported the empire's prosperity. Punishments for such behavior reinforced the importance of trust within the trading system. The Aztec legal system also addressed the misuse of alcohol, which was carefully controlled in their society. The fermented drink pulque was known throughout the region and sometimes used during religious ceremonies or special celebrations. However, Aztec law strictly limited who could drink and under what circumstances. Young people were forbidden from consuming alcohol, and even adults were expected to maintain control over their behavior when drinking. Becoming excessively drunk in public was considered embarrassing and irresponsible because it suggested a lack of discipline. In a society that valued self-control and dignity, drunken behavior could lead to punishment designed to remind individuals that personal conduct affected the reputation of the entire community. Elderly members of society sometimes received special permission to drink pulque during certain gatherings, reflecting the respect given to older individuals within Aztec culture. Age was associated with wisdom, and elders often served as advisors within families and communities. Even so, moderation remained an important expectation. Another interesting aspect of Aztec punishment involved responsibility toward communal projects, such as maintaining irrigation canals, repairing roads, or supporting agricultural work that benefited the entire village. Many communities depended on shared labor systems in which neighbors worked together to complete large tasks that no single family could accomplish alone. If someone repeatedly refused to participate in these communal duties, local leaders could intervene. Punishment in such cases reminded people that their survival depended on cooperation. In the Aztec worldview, selfishness threatened the balance that allowed communities to thrive in challenging environments. When we examine these punishments closely, it becomes clear that Aztec law was deeply connected to the values of the society it governed. Discipline, respect for authority, honesty in trade, and cooperation among neighbors were seen as essential qualities that kept the empire functioning smoothly. Punishments were designed not only to correct wrongdoing, but also to reinforce these shared expectations. Through this system of discipline, the Aztecs maintained one of the most organized civilizations in the ancient Americas. Their cities grew large and prosperous, their markets remained vibrant centers of trade, and their culture developed rich traditions in art, religion, and education. Yet behind all of this prosperity stood the constant reminder that the stability of the empire depended on the behavior of its people. Every law and punishment carried the same message: that maintaining order was necessary for protecting the strength and balance of Aztec society. As the powerful Aztec Empire continued standing at the center of Mesoamerica during the early 16th century, its cities, markets, and temples reflected a civilization built upon discipline, order, and deeply rooted traditions. The enormous capital city of Tenochtitlan remained one of the most remarkable urban centers in the world at that time. Stone causeways connected the island city to the mainland. Canals carried canoes loaded with goods, and towering temples rose above the city like massive stairways reaching toward the sky. Within this highly organized world, the laws of the empire shaped the behavior of millions of people every single day. The Aztecs believed that society functioned properly only when individuals respected their duties and maintained self-control. Punishments were therefore designed to protect the balance of the community and remind citizens that their actions affected everyone around them. The unusual punishments used in Aztec society were not random acts of cruelty, but reflections of cultural values that emphasized discipline, honor, and responsibility. One particularly fascinating aspect of Aztec punishment involved the protection of community trust. In a civilization where trade, farming, and shared labor were essential for survival, trust between people was incredibly important. Farmers trusted neighbors to respect their land. Merchants trusted customers and partners to conduct honest transactions, and families trusted community leaders to maintain order. When someone deliberately betrayed this trust, the consequences could be severe. For example, individuals who repeatedly stole from others or disrupted the stability of the community could face punishments intended to prevent further harm. The Aztecs believed that allowing dishonest behavior to continue unchecked would slowly weaken the foundation of society itself. Another unusual area where punishment could appear involved false testimony during legal disputes. The Aztec justice system depended heavily on truthful witnesses and honest reporting during trials. Judges relied on testimony to understand what had happened during a dispute or crime. If someone intentionally lied during a legal proceeding, it could mislead the court and damage the fairness of the entire system. Because of this, giving false testimony was treated as a serious offense. Punishments reinforced the idea that honesty was essential for maintaining justice. Without truth in the courtroom, leaders believed that conflicts between citizens could spiral into chaos and undermine the authority of the law. The Aztecs also enforced strict expectations regarding respect toward elders and community leaders. Age and experience were highly valued in Aztec culture. Elders often carried knowledge about farming, traditions, and religious customs that younger generations needed to learn. Respecting elders was therefore not only about politeness, but also about preserving wisdom that helped guide society. If a younger person openly insulted or disrespected an elder, punishment could follow. This type of discipline reminded people that social harmony depended on maintaining respect between generations. The Aztecs believed that when younger individuals listened to the guidance of older members of society, communities remained stable, and traditions could continue across many generations. The legal system of the Aztec Empire also addressed the responsibilities of craftsmen and artisans who produced many of the goods used throughout the empire. Skilled artisans created pottery, tools, textiles, jewelry, and elaborate feather decorations that were admired across Mesoamerica. Their work was not only practical but also deeply connected to cultural identity and artistic tradition. If a craftsman deliberately produced poor quality goods or attempted to cheat customers, punishment could follow. The Aztecs believed that craftsmanship required honesty and dedication. Goods produced by artisans often traveled through trade networks and represented the reputation of entire communities. Maintaining high standards in craftsmanship helped protect the integrity of Aztec markets and the reputation of their merchants. When examining all of these punishments together, it becomes clear that the Aztec legal system was built around a central principle: the protection of balance within society. The Aztecs believed that the world functioned best when people respected their responsibilities and lived with discipline. Laws and punishments were tools designed to maintain this balance and prevent behaviors that might threaten the stability of the empire. Although some of the punishments used by the Aztecs may appear unusual or harsh today, they reflected the values and beliefs of a civilization that placed great importance on order, cooperation, and respect for tradition. These laws helped support one of the most organized and powerful societies in the ancient Americas. Through strict discipline and carefully enforced rules, the Aztec Empire maintained a complex system of cities, markets, religious ceremonies, and agricultural networks that supported millions of people. Every law reminded citizens that their behavior was connected to the larger structure of society, and every punishment reinforced the idea that protecting that structure was essential for the survival of the empire. As we slowly move toward the end of our journey through the strange and disciplined world of the Aztec Empire, it becomes easier to understand why their punishments often appear so unusual to modern eyes. The Aztecs did not view punishment simply as a way to hurt those who broke the rules. Instead, punishment was part of a much larger system that protected the structure of their civilization. Every law, every warning, and every consequence existed to maintain order inside one of the most powerful societies of the ancient Americas. For the Aztecs, society was like a carefully balanced structure where every person had a place. Farmers produced the food that supported cities. Merchants carried goods across long trade routes. Warriors defended the empire and expanded its borders. Priests maintained sacred rituals, and families raised children who would eventually take their place within the same system. If any part of that structure became weak, leaders feared that the balance holding their world together might collapse. Because of this belief, punishments were designed to reinforce discipline at every level of society. Children learned obedience from their parents. Students learned endurance and respect in schools. Merchants followed strict rules in marketplaces, and warriors were expected to show courage and loyalty on the battlefield. The Aztecs believed that when individuals behaved responsibly, the empire remained strong. Many of the punishments we have explored might seem harsh today, but within Aztec culture they were considered necessary lessons. The purpose was not simply to punish wrongdoing, but to remind people of their responsibilities to the community. When someone broke the law, the punishment served as a warning not only to that person, but also to everyone who witnessed the consequences. This approach to justice helped create a society where discipline was deeply embedded in everyday life. Markets operated smoothly, agricultural systems remained productive, and cities like Tenochtitlan continued growing into some of the most impressive urban centers in the ancient world. Tenochtitlan itself stood as a symbol of the empire's power and organization. Built on islands within a great lake, the city was connected by causeways and filled with canals that allowed canoes to travel through neighborhoods carrying goods and people. Massive temples rose high above the city skyline, while markets bustled with merchants trading food, textiles, tools, and luxury items from across the region. Behind the beauty and complexity of this civilization stood the strict laws that governed behavior. Every citizen understood that their actions affected the larger community. Maintaining respect, honesty, and discipline was not simply a personal choice. It was a duty expected from everyone living within the empire. Of course, history eventually brought dramatic changes to the Aztec world. In the early 1500s, Spanish explorers and soldiers arrived in the region, bringing new diseases, weapons, and political alliances that would eventually lead to the fall of the Aztec Empire. The great city of Tenochtitlan would later be transformed into Mexico City, and many of the traditions of Aztec civilization would slowly disappear or change under colonial rule. Yet the legacy of the Aztecs remains deeply important in understanding the history of the Americas. Their cities, agricultural systems, art, religion, and legal traditions reveal a civilization that developed complex solutions for governing large populations long before European arrival. The strange punishments used in Aztec society remind us that every civilization creates laws based on its own values and beliefs. What may seem unusual or surprising today often made perfect sense within the cultural world where those laws were created. And as the sun slowly sets over the ancient valley where Tenochtitlan once stood, we are left with a deeper understanding of how discipline, tradition, and responsibility shaped one of the most fascinating civilizations in human history. If you enjoy exploring deep and unusual corners of history like this one, consider supporting the channel by liking the video and subscribing so we can continue uncovering more forgotten stories from the past together.